Hey, welcome back to Get Down to Business, the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. I'm very excited for this conversation. I'm thrilled to be joined by Charles Reed. Charles is a payroll expert. Charles Reed's companies have provided full service payroll services, payroll tax services, and other payroll-related services since 1991. Charles is an accomplished senior executive and entrepreneur with more than 50 years of financial leadership experience in a broad range of industries. And he's the author of 4 books. His latest book, The Payroll Book, a guide for small businesses and startups, is currently number 25 in small business books section on Amazon. Charles Reed, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to get to know you over the next little bit, but Mr. Reed, with over 50 years of experience in the financial sector, what are some of the most common payroll challenges that you see repeated over and over again faced by small businesses and startups?
There's 2 major areas. One is small business people don't know what they don't know. They don't know what they have to report, when they have to report it, how they have to report it, how they have to pay it, when they have to pay it. Those things are critical because if you miss any of those, there's a penalty. And if it's payments, there's interest on those, and there's interest on the penalties. The other big one is misclassification. People will classify their workers incorrectly as independent contractors or as employees. That's not a choice. There's a whole body of law that sets that relationship, and you have to abide by that law. So if the gentleman or a lady who's working for you says, well, I want to be an independent contractor, that may not be an option for the businessman to pay them that way. They may have to be an employee and W-2s issued and taxes withheld and deposited. So you have to understand all that law, and that changes. It changed again in March of this year with a new Labor Department regulation.
Yeah, well, certainly you've been doing this for a long time, but there's some of those common themes that I know you've seen repeated over and over again. But certainly, as you just mentioned, you're staying abreast and current with the latest trends, with the latest regulations, which we appreciate indeed. So perfect segue. Charles, you've been doing this for a long time. When did you first catch that payroll and, might I say, entrepreneurial bug? When did you become interested in this topic?
In my early 40s, I realized I was never going to make it to the top of the corporate ladder. I didn't have the political skills. I just won't play politics. I won't stab people in the back and toss them off the ladder. So if I wanted to run a business, and I grew up in a family business, I'd have to start my own. So the wife and I started this in 1991. In December of this year, it'll be a third of a century. We started it. I hung out my shingle as an accountant and had a payroll sideline. I liked the payroll. We grew the company. About a dozen years ago, I sold off the accounting practice to my partner and kept the payroll company and have continued to grow it ever since. I like it. It's business to business. It's all over the country. It's interesting people. It's interesting problems. And I like fighting the IRS.
Well, congratulations on all that success. And I still hear that passion in your voice. So, many of our listeners are small business owners, entrepreneurs, much like you. And many businesses debate handling payroll internally or outsourcing. Can you offer some insights on the pros and cons of each approach, particularly for our audience of small businesses?
Well, if you outsource it, then you get somebody who lives it every day, who keeps up on all the rules, all the changes, all the intricacies, knows how to advocate for you effectively with the taxing authorities, knows in many cases more than the taxing authority knows about the law. I'm a U.S. tax court practitioner, which means I can take my client's case to U.S. tax court. What independent businessman can do that if need be and do it successfully? So that's the first thing, is the knowledge. Then the systems. Our systems are state-of-the-art, our equipment state-of-the-art. We keep it up because we do thousands and thousands of payrolls. You can't afford to do that for a single company. Then privacy. We do this electronically. This stuff doesn't sit around. This is not for anybody to see and look at and so on. You can keep it very confidential if you choose to. Fraud. We prefer electronic payments. We can do checks for a client if that's what they want, but it's on our trust account, which is heavily protected. Check fraud is a huge thing. And every time you issue a check, particularly a payroll check, you've just invited every fraud artist in the country to commit fraud on your company.
Yeah, absolutely. We're chatting with payroll guru Charles Reed, and your book, Charles, The Payroll Book, a guide for small businesses and startups, sounds like a valuable resource. Can you share a specific tip from the book that can help our listeners overcome a common payroll challenge?
Well, we've mentioned some, but there's another thing in here that many people aren't aware of, and that's 45S, which allows you to get a tax credit if you pay for time off that's subject to the same purposes as Family Medical Leave Act would be. If you don't have Family Medical Leave Act requirements, it still allows you to get a tax credit for up to 25% of what you pay your people for time off if it meets certain criteria.
Yeah, that's valuable information right there. And real quick before we cut to break, payroll goes beyond just issuing checks. What are some additional benefits or services small businesses should consider offering their employees through payroll providers?
Well, you have all the benefits for the employees. You have Section 125, where you can do benefit plans that are pre-tax, 401ks, other retirement plans, all those types of health benefits, dental benefits, vision benefits, gym memberships, all kinds of things are available. We have a number of things on our website, including a discount shopping service that's free, discount prescription cards, all this kind of thing.
That's great. Well, I don't want to share all the secrets right now. First of all, because we're going to continue our conversation with Charles Reed when we return in just a moment. He's the author of The Payroll Book, a guide for small businesses and startups. And we've got a lot more in this conversation. So listeners, don't touch that dial. You're listening to Get Down to Business, the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. And we'll be right back. Hey, we're back on Get Down to Business. As always, you can get on my website, syklein.com, and search for us. Search for Get Down to Business on your favorite podcast app. Just do me a favor. Subscribe, rate, review, and share. It will ensure that you get pinged and notified when new episodes drop and that others in your network will find out all about our program with over 11 years of shows. So speaking of shows, I'm continuing our conversation with this veteran of the financial sector. That's Mr. Charles Reed, 50 years in the financial sector. And we're chatting about simplifying payroll for small businesses. Early in the conversation, Charles, you talked about how payroll regulation is complex. It seems to be getting more complex. How can small businesses stay on top of changing laws and tax regulations to ensure accurate and compliant payroll processing? I know one of your passions is indeed fighting with the IRS.
Well, I've always, even before I got into the business, believed in outsourcing payroll. It's a very complex body of law. It's a very complex set of regulations. And for the individual businessman who may be very good at what they do, to then take on that entire area of law and try to understand that effectively just doesn't make any sense for the pittance it costs to outsource it. So I always believed in outsourcing payroll before I ever got into the business, and I believe in it even more so now. I mean, I don't make my own cars, I don't grow my own food, I don't sew my own clothes. I outsource things because I'm not good at building cars. I'm good at payroll. So it just makes sense for an entrepreneur or businessman to, as quickly as possible, outsource those things that he can't have in-house or have staff for. Now, when you get to 500 or 1,000 people, sure, you can afford to pay somebody $100,000 a year to oversee your payroll. But for the small entrepreneur, it just doesn't make sense.
Absolutely. And Charles, just in our remaining minute or two that we have, we know that technology plays a big role in modern payroll. Can you discuss some technology innovations or solutions that, again, can streamline payroll tasks for small businesses?
Well, we continue to upgrade our systems so they fully integrate with everything. So it's one entry point. It handles all your payroll, all your benefits, all your timekeeping. All that flows through. You only have to touch things once. You only have to enter an employee's information once. All the APIs work together. It feeds your accounting system afterwards. So the integration of technology continues to enhance the whole aspect of payroll as part of your whole landscape of doing business electronically.
Absolutely. Well, Charles, you're a pleasure, my friend. I've certainly enjoyed our conversation, and you've demystified a lot of these very critical topics, very complex topics of payroll, and we'll certainly use you as a subject matter expert in the future. In the meantime, Charles, how can folks learn more about your services and get in touch with you and your team?
We're all over the web at Get Payroll. They can see us on YouTube. We have a lot of fun videos as well as educational videos, so they can look those up. My email is cjr@getpayroll. And if they have a quick question, 972-353-0000 is the office number.
Fantastic. Charles Reed, thank you so much for joining us on the program. We'll link in our show notes as well. And this has been a week of a jam-packed lineup of advice, information, entrepreneurs that we can all learn a lot from. Of course, ending with Mr. Charles Reed, a 50-year veteran of the financial industry and remains current on all things payroll. Again, all of our guests can be found through our show notes. And again, get on my website, syklein.com. I love to hear from our listeners because you are the ones that tell us, again, about the topics that you want to hear about each and every week. And be sure to check out our good friend, Laura Catchabone-Gerace from Coldwell Banker Stratford Place. She's an expert on all things real estate, certainly in the Chicagoland area, but always happy to provide a free consultation for any of our listeners. Our sponsors, our guests are all linked in our show notes. That's a wrap for us this week. To success, let's get down to business. We'll see you next Sunday right here on AM 560 The Answer, wherever podcasts can be found. Have a great week ahead. Take care.